The U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear a crucial case, U.S. Postal Service v. Konan, which revolves around a black landlord's claim that postal workers intentionally refused to deliver mail to her properties because of her race. This case, concisely titled as Supreme Court to Rule on Racial Mail Delivery Claim, is not just about discrimination. It is a profound legal challenge to the Federal Tort Claims Act, FTCA, and the immunity it grants to federal agencies like the U.S. Postal Service, USPS. Summary and analysis. The plaintiff, Lebene Konan, a black woman who owns rental properties in Texas, alleges that two USPS employees engaged in a racially motivated campaign by changing the lock on a central mailbox, halting deliveries, and marking mail as undeliverable, even after her ownership was confirmed. She claims this intentional failure to deliver mail caused her tenants to leave, resulting in significant financial losses and emotional distress. The legal complexity arises from the FTCA's postal exception. This provision shields the government from lawsuits arising out of the loss, miscarriage, or negligent transmission of letters or postal matter. Konan argues that intentional refusal, especially one driven by racial animus, does not fall under the umbrella of loss, miscarriage, or negligent transmission. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with Konan, allowing her case to proceed by ruling that the exception does not apply to intentional, wrongful acts. The USPS, however, appealed to the Supreme Court, arguing that the Fifth Circuit's decision creates a loophole that could be exploited, leading to a deluge of costly lawsuits that would financially cripple the agency. Reasons and consequences. Reasons for the Supreme Court's review. The primary reason the Supreme Court took this case is the split among federal circuit courts. 3 other appeals courts have previously ruled that the postal exception does bar similar claims, regardless of whether the mail mishandling was negligent or intentional. The Supreme Court must resolve this conflict to ensure a uniform application of federal law across the country. Additionally, the case presents a fundamental tension between government accountability, the need to hold federal agencies and employees accountable for intentional, harmful, and discriminatory conduct, agency function, the need to protect the USPS's operational efficiency and limited resources from a potentially unmanageable volume of litigation over routine mail issues. Potential consequences. A ruling in favor of Konan would significantly expand government accountability. It would affirm that the postal exception does not create a shield for federal employees engaging in intentional discrimination or harassment under the guise of their official duties. This would provide a powerful new avenue for individuals to seek justice and compensation for intentional torts committed by USPS workers, potentially including claims related to voter registration and mail-in ballots. Conversely, a ruling in favor of the USPS would reinforce agency immunity. It would mean that even if Konan's allegations of racial discrimination are true, she could not sue the USPS under the FTCA for damages. While this would protect the Postal Service's budget, critics argue it would give postal workers a license to act with intentional malice, including racial discrimination, without legal recourse for the affected party, a consequence that undermines civil rights principles and the spirit of the FTCA itself. Prediction and solutions. Prediction. The Supreme Court's decision will hinge on a narrow legal interpretation, the meaning of loss, miscarriage, or negligent transmission. Given the current court's tendency toward textualism, the justices will examine whether an intentional act of withholding mail can logically be included in those terms. A majority may agree with the Fifth Circuit that intentional is the opposite of negligent, and therefore falls outside the exception's language, thus ruling for Konan. Alternatively, they may agree with the USPS that loss and miscarriage are broad terms that simply describe the result. The mail was not delivered, regardless of the employee's intent, thus ruling for the USPS. The political and social dimensions of a racial discrimination claim against a federal agency make this a high-stakes decision. The outcome is highly unpredictable, but a likely compromise could involve a narrow ruling that defines intentional, racially motivated denial of service as a separate tort that bypasses the exception while still barring broad claims of intentional mishandling to protect the USPS from a flood of general litigation. Proposed solutions, legislative and policy. Legislative clarification. The clearest solution would be for Congress to amend the FTCA. Lawmakers could specifically add a clause stating that the postal exception does not apply to claims of intentional discrimination based on protected characteristics like race, religion, or gender. This would achieve accountability without forcing a strained interpretation of the existing language. Internal policy reform. Regardless of the Supreme Court's decision, the USPS can and should strengthen its internal disciplinary and investigative processes. Implementing rigorous, zero-tolerance policies and swift internal investigations for any claims of racial or other forms of discrimination would both deter misconduct and provide an alternative mechanism for redress. Alternative administrative relief. Congress or the USPS could establish a dedicated, streamlined administrative claims process specifically for intentional torts and discrimination claims. This mechanism would allow for compensation without requiring individuals to navigate the costly and time-consuming federal court system, thus protecting the agency from excessive litigation while ensuring victims are compensated.